Hello everyone. Today's video is about a couple of different topics. One question about biofilms versus fibrin nests, and the other question is about fatigue that happens after exercise. So post-exertional malaise might be an appropriate label there. So just before jumping into the questions, if you don't mind taking a quick second to please like, share, subscribe, and or post a quick comment on the video, I'd really appreciate it. So thank you in advance for taking a second to do that. And as per usual, nothing I'm saying should be construed as medical advice. This is for informational purposes only, and if you need medical advice, please talk to your healthcare provider to get that advice. So actually, I have the exercise fatigue question up first, so I'll start with that one. So it says here, I'm curious how exercise intolerance presents. Does it prevent you from exercising because you feel fatigued in the moment, or can you exercise and feel just fine while doing it, but then feel unusually fatigued or even flu-like after the fact? So thank you for the question. So generally speaking, like kind of traditionally, this quote-unquote post-exertional malaise, or PEM, which is kind of a hallmark feature of chronic fatigue syndrome, a person can definitely feel tired or crummy in the moment while they're exercising, but they will feel markedly worse afterwards. So it might be like, okay, I'm pushing myself and this isn't easy, it's not comfortable, but then if they have post-exertional malaise, it's like, oh, now I feel really rotten afterwards. Or some folks might actually feel half decent while they're exercising. Again, if they have chronic fatigue syndrome, aka myalgic encephalomyelitis, then they might barely be able to do any kind of exertion. It really depends on the severity of the presentation. But generally speaking, the kind of hallmark feature of post-exertional malaise would be feeling unwell following exercise, but a person could feel less unwell during the exercise, or maybe not feel unwell at all potentially, depending on what's going on. So generally speaking, when a person's experiencing that, and if it's outside of a chronic fatigue syndrome, myalgic encephalomyelitis case, then it really would beg the question, what is going on with that person's physiology? Specifically, my mind would say, what's going on with that person's mitochondria? Is there something that's interfering with the mitochondrial function to the point where it's impairing their recovery? In the moment, when we're exercising, we need to call on the production of more energy reserves. We're going to tap into our kind of backup form of energy in the form of creatine that stored in our muscle tissue. We're going to start burning up glycogen, this storage form of carbs in the muscles, which is an easy to burn form of energy. Our mitochondria are using those resources to crank out more, or using the glycogen anyways, amongst other things, other nutrients to crank out more ATP. So like in the moment, we're exerting more energy. We're doing some high intensity interval training, or we're sparring in our jiu-jitsu class, or we're playing basketball, we're going for a run, we're lifting weights, whatever it is we're doing. But then for a person who's feeling well during those activities, it sounds like, okay, the mitochondria are cranking out enough energy, cranking out enough ATP to do that. But then if after the fact it's like, and then I feel like I got hit by a bus, I feel really tired and depleted, well then that's something where it suggests that the mitochondria had enough oomph to get through the exercise, but then didn't have enough oomph to actually see through the recovery side of things. So it would be maybe akin to saying like, oh, like I've got, a young person gets their first paycheck. My oldest just started working at post high school, so this is on my mind. You get your first paycheck. It's like, oh my gosh, I have all this money. So it's like, let's go. I'm gonna take my girlfriend out to dinner. I'm gonna, buy some new clothes. I'm gonna get some, whatever upgrades for my vehicle or something like that. You burn through all the money. It's like, oh darn, I forgot that I have to pay for gas until my next paycheck. I need to, squirrel away money so I can move out and get an apartment, whatever it happens to be. So it's like, oh, you kind of burned through all those resources, but kind of like, it's like your mitochondria didn't think through to the next step. And of course, our mitochondria aren't thinking organelles, but maybe that's something kind of akin to that. Just not having enough energy to see the whole process through. So in a case like that, again, it's nuanced and varied, but like for a person who's, say, generally healthy, they don't have chronic symptoms all the time, they're feeling quite good. One of the things that can definitely come into play that might contribute to post-exertional malaise would be if the person's maybe not eating enough carbohydrates, which don't get me wrong, I talk about the carnivore diet, which is a carb-free diet. I talk about a modified keto diet. Generally lower carb diets are a good fit for a lot of folks, but for some folks, the pendulum has swung a little too far in that direction, and they're not getting enough carbs for their needs. So it may be that there's not enough glycogen replenishment happening, and so it's like, oh, the body kind of burns through those stores, but then there isn't enough for the after exercise recovery potentially. So that'd be one thing to consider. Another thing to consider would be stress levels overall. So if a person is in kind of more of like a fight or flight mode, kind of like a revved up sort of like stress or maybe anxiety or overwhelm mode, then that's something where in the moment and while exercising, that might be really good because we're engaging our sympathetic nervous system, we're revving our nervous systems up more to have more energy output, produce more cortisol, produce more adrenaline, produce more thyroid hormone, etc. But then in the post-exercise recovery phase, where we should be phasing into more of a parasympathetic mode, because at the end of the day, our mitochondria really thrive more in a parasympathetic mode. We bursts of sympathetic, absolutely, but it's really parasympathetic that helps the mitochondria the most. The nervous system might not be able to get into that kind of relaxed enough mode, that parasympathetic enough mode to properly regulate the mitochondrial function. So that would be another possible explanation. Another possible explanation would be if a person had sort of very select nutrient deficiencies. So if for some reason, maybe genetically, a person's just not that great at replenishing their creatine stores, for example, that's something that might contribute to a post-exercise fatigue type presentation. Or it may be that they're running just a bit too low in X, Y, or Z amino acid like carnitine or taurine or vitamin B5 or CoQ10, which B5 and CoQ10 are of course not amino acids, but examples of other nutrients that are really important for mitochondrial function. But if a person was already taking all those things and wasn't and still having these symptoms, then it would not be related to that. So it really just depends on the playing field for the individual in question. But insufficient carbs potentially. Being in more of a sympathetic overdrive mode, and then possibly having some select nutrient deficiencies that weren't enough to make a person feel sick, day to day or unwell day to day, but maybe enough that they couldn't recover from exercise as well. So again, thank you for the question. I hope that gives some useful information to chew on. The other question is about, I'll just read it. So it says, a question about biofilms, or more on fibrin nests that are present in Bartonella and Babesia. Are they classified as biofilms, and would biofilm phase 1 and phase 2 boosters, or maybe breakers, might have been an autocorrect question or issue, apply? I found that the Canadian product Baluki, which is a product which is called lumbrokinase, or an enzyme called lumbrokinase, it's a proteolytic enzyme, is a game changer for my patients. No other proteolytic enzymes work as well. I'm just not sure that it's a specific effect on dissolving fibrinogen or biofilms or both, but I get better results with something like DMSA. So thank you for the question. Very technical questions. Good question. Questions from other clinicians. It's a little more technical, but I think it's good to chat about for everybody's sake. To my understanding, proteolytic enzymes like lumbrokinase or weaker ones like stratiopeptidase or nattokinase are really, really good at breaking down fibrin. So if there are fibrin nests, or if there's some like glycocalyx deposition on the lining of the blood vessels, those proteolytic enzymes are, generally speaking, to my understanding, can be hands down the most potent thing that we can work with to help break those down. My understanding is that those proteolytic enzymes are also phase 1 biofilm disruptors, and then they're just not that great at breaking down phase 2 biofilms, more advanced or tenacious biofilms. So where it gets really tricky, as all of us as clinicians know, I'm sure many patients listening would know as well, it can be really hard to know exactly what's doing what, because a person goes on lumbrokinase and they're feeling really good, or maybe they're having a lot of detox symptoms or feeling worse initially and then start feeling better. Well, is it because you're breaking down fibrin nests? Are you breaking down the glycocalyx buildup in the blood vessels? Are you breaking down phase 1 biofilms? Is it all of the above? We really just don't know. So I don't know if there's, my understanding is there's not really a way to figure that out unless you're measuring hematological markers to see if fibrin levels are going down. Really don't have great objective tests. One could argue not really any objective tests outside of a research setting to tell us how biofilms are coming along. So I think it's just we don't know, but as long as it's helping, then wonderful. So thank you for that question as well. If anybody has any questions or comments on this topic or anything else, please just post in the comment section below, and I will do my best to answer as soon as I can.